We'll have John McClain in the next segment. We're joined by James Crapea. He is with the Oregonian, covers University of Oregon football with us on Sikkim 365 Radio. What's the feeling right now around Eugene after Fresno State?
First and foremost, I was going to say I would be totally misbilled, and surely it would be disappointing to somebody if they're expecting John McClain and got me.
Yeah, I know.
Far be it for me to that would have been. I very much respect the man's resume. I am most definitely not Mr. McClain in terms of that, but no. In seriousness, no, the feeling around Eugene is that of I'd say relative angst. Far be it for me to speak on behalf of an Oregon fan base by any stretch of the imagination, but all I've gotten by way of feedback in the social media verse and emails and the like over the last couple of days has been just nothing but abject. I would say skepticism would be the least of it. It is downright pessimism at the moment because they're not happy with the display that they saw on Saturday. They are not happy with the performance that Oregon had against Fresno State. And this fan base is extrapolating based on that performance, which was not impressive by any stretch of the imagination, but was also being played very close to the vest. They're unwilling, many of them, unwilling to accept that strategically Oregon may have been playing things close to the vest against Fresno State, and any errors that may have occurred along the way, no matter how good the defense may have played at times. This is a fan base that is filled with, like I say, a pretty good degree of pessimism and angst heading into this game with Ohio State because they feel like they just watched the team underperform against Fresno State, and they know that Ohio State is a massive test coming up, and they don't believe that that kind of performance that they just saw will result in anything positive against a far better opponent.
Kayvon Thibodeau, is he going to be able to play? He was in a boot the other night.
That is the most important question and the most important ankle as far as this week is concerned, and probably all of college football, to be sure. Certainly for Oregon and Ohio State in the game, but being that it is the most marquee game in the sport this week, that's why I say it's probably the most important ankle in all of college football. I'm not going to say I'm a doctor by any stretch of the imagination. If you're looking for a degree of optimism that he will play, and frankly, anybody, whether they're an Oregon fan, Ohio State fan, or just an objective viewer of an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff on Saturday, you should want to see the best defensive end in the country, the best pass rusher in the country, play against an Ohio State offensive line loaded with talent and 4 tackles along the offensive line. By trade, at least, tackles along the offensive line. And you should want to see the best go up against the best. You should want to see that caliber of play. The degree of optimism there is that after he got rolled up on, he got attended to, he got taped up, he moved around under his own power, he returned to the field, and he even made a tackle. Now, yeah, he left the game before halftime, didn't return, and like you said, he's in a walking boot thereafter. Can all of that be precautionary? Absolutely. Would you want to protect him at all costs? And if you were a coach in that spot, absolutely. Does that mean that he's absolutely going to play on Saturday this week? No. It's an ankle sprain, and obviously when you're a player of his caliber and do what he does, having great strength and dexterity in your ankles is awfully important. So I'm not going to be tough in somebody else's body. I'm not going to profess to be a doctor. The optimism is he was able to get back out there even in the course of last week. Pessimism is you're still dealing with an ankle sprain. And, you hope going up against, like I say, an offensive line that really has 4 tackles along the line. That's a lot of long and big bodies that you don't want to go up against at anything less than your best. And if he is able to go, he's probably not going to be 100%. And that's not good no matter who you root for.
So, James, Anthony Brown, started off at Boston College, did a lot there for 3 years, and now been in Eugene for the last couple, gets the nod this past weekend. What were the feelings from Ducks fans on how he performed or didn't perform, and what are the thoughts on him heading into this game against the Buckeyes?
Yeah, it's been really kind of interesting to gauge and understand where the Oregon fan base kind of come down on Brown. Where last year it was they were very, very optimistic about Tyler Shuck, who's now at Texas Tech, of course, led that win over Houston for Texas Tech this past weekend. They were high on Shuck going into the season, and then once things started to tail off a little bit midway through the year, suddenly they got very down on Shuck, and they all wanted Brown to come in. The last year it was they couldn't get enough Anthony Brown. He was going to fix all the problems. By the way, problems that were there with a quarterback in Tyler Shuck who only led the league in passer efficiency, but, problems. Okay. Now, heading into the year, knowing that he was the only quarterback with any game experience on the roster, and yes, with some very talented freshmen who are here as well, this fan base was almost like, well, yeah, that's nice that guy is there. But about that 5-star freshman over there,
yeah.
and then it was like, oh, well, you mean the guy who took all the first team reps in the spring and all the first team reps in the first fall scrimmage and all that? You mean that guy won the job? No, surely that must be wrong. And then they were down on the announcement when it came out. I'm going, were you really expecting a different outcome here? I mean, this was like the worst kept secret around this town for the last 5-6 months. Really? Okay. And then he goes out and performs. And again, I thought the game plan as a whole was pretty close to the best and pretty conservative. And yeah, he missed a couple of throws. He also made a couple of pretty nice plays, including the game-winning touchdown with his feet. Mm-hmm. But all anybody wants to talk about is, well, his percentage wasn't good enough. I thought it was okay. It wasn't great. As the coaches even said, they called it solid. Anthony wasn't happy with his own performance after Saturday's game. He had a rushing touchdown, again, to win the game, a passing touchdown that was thrown on an absolute line for 32 yards. It was a great throw. He missed some throws. Yeah, he did. In his first start in 700 days. And against a Fresno State team that, while they're not going to be competing, for the playoff or anything like that, they're not a pushover. They are well coached. They have a lot of transfers out of the Pac-12 and other power conferences on that roster, including at quarterback. They have the most prolific all-around running back in the country by way of production. I'm not going to tell you that Ronnie Weir's the best running back, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they have a defensive front seven that generated in the top 20 in sacks a year ago. Well, you throw all that together, it's like, well, yeah, in his first start in 700 days, the guy is going to face some pressure, and it's not going to be all pretty. And by the way, the game that matters is next week. But right now, this fan base is they're almost cannibalizing right now. It's like I say, it's hard to, for a game of the good, you want to say, aren't you folks optimistic? And you'd be like, they're ready to pounce on me just for even bringing up the idea of trying to be optimistic to anybody. And I'm like, good grief.
Yeah, it's your fault, damn it. It is.
And the backup quarterback's always the most popular player most of the time.
Well, that's a given. That's a given.
Yeah, and I think last year they ended up playing 8 games, and they got smoked by Iowa State, and or whatever, there's 7 games, and then maybe a little antsy. But Ohio State is obviously incredibly explosive. They weren't flawless against Minnesota, who scratched and clawed for 3 quarters. But boy, what about the secondary of Oregon against those weapons that Ohio State seems to have running every way you can in the secondary?
Absolutely. Well, that's obviously one of the big matchups of the game in an area that no matter who Ohio State plays is going to have a decided, they're going to have a decided advantage. And that's just the way it goes. Having said that, Oregon does have a really talented outside corner, Michael Wright, one of their top recruits for a couple of years ago. He started all the games last season. Yes, in the short season, as you mentioned. Got picked on a little bit as a first-year starter last year, but he got that experience. And he went up against a couple of good receivers last year. Guys who are now in the NFL. Well, now he's their best corner because their other corner is in the NFL. And they had to break in a couple of young guys last week. So they gave up nearly 300 yards passing, but nobody got beat over the top. Nobody got a ball over their head. Yeah, they gave up some short stuff, and all right, maybe they needed to be a little bit more aggressive as young guys in their first, major significant game action. But to your point of how do they match up with this Ohio State vaunted offense where every strike that they had last week against Minnesota was for huge chunks of yards, and you know what Olave can do in blowing the top off the coverage. Wilson can make plays in open space like crazy. Ruckert is an unbelievable matchup at tight end, and that's just to name 3. Yeah. They have probably another 3. And doesn't even mention their running back. Look, I'm not telling you they're going to be able to keep a lid on everything all the time. I don't think anyone in the country can against this Ohio State offense. But I think anybody who's going to attempt to win at Ohio Stadium against this offense, against this receiving core in particular, you can give up one over your head. What I call a nameplate or a tail light play. You can give up one because I don't know if anybody can get away with giving up zero. That's really hard.
Yeah, they are so explosive.
But I don't know if anybody can go in that building, especially a team who has loaded with basically a roster who has never played in a building of that size. Very few players on this roster do it. And the Pac-12 doesn't have any stadiums of 110,000 or 90,000, which is currently the ticket sales at the moment. You cannot let that crowd get into it and momentum just completely get at you that badly, where the crowd becomes the 12th man of that element, and you're the road team. And now what? You're in if you give up 2 long plays for touchdowns against them, and that's 14 points, you could be in for a long day. And that's just we're just talking on the long plays. We're not even talking about the dink and dunks. Mm-hmm. So in order to, I think if Oregon's going to win this game, they have to grind out a game in the 20s and control the game on the ground. And I know that's not very appealing to Ducks fans right now, who want they want their offense to look like what Alabama did or what LSU did, and it doesn't everybody. I mean, that sounds lovely. And I'm sure in Big 12 country, everyone thinks everyone can do that every week, but, that's what you see from Oklahoma over the years. Well, Oregon's working to that, but they're not there yet. And it's not because of Anthony Brown, or it's not because, they were conservative in play calling in the first week. It's just, in order to do that, you have to have all the weapons. They're getting there. And they may have the potential to get there and show splashes of it along the way this season. I just think they're a little bit away on their chronology to getting to that level of a vaunted offense. They don't have Ohio State's offense. They don't have Ohio State's weapons right now. Not today.
James, so Oregon and Ohio State are alliance members. They're a part of that that big alliance.
Does that come with a card and everything?
Yeah, so this is a game that we'll probably
AARP.
It's a game we'll probably see in the future. I would imagine on more than one occasion is one of those non-conference type of games. But what has been the buzz in the Northwest with realignment now starting to look like it's settling it down a little bit? I mean, what's been the reaction to the alliance announcement and just all of the moving pieces that the Big 12 shook, or all the moving pieces in the Big 12 that kind of shook the nation there for a few weeks?
Well, I think it's, again, from gauging, part of it was a little bit of an element of excitement of, well, is this league going to expand? And obviously they didn't. And there are a million reasons why ultimately they didn't. And nothing really fit, to be perfectly honest with you. Not well, certainly. Yeah. So then it became, all right, well, if you stick with 12, what do you do here? This concept that's being bandied around, I do think that it makes a lot of sense. All fans hear from it is about scheduling. They don't want to hear about autonomy 5 votes and equivalency scholarships, and they don't. That we're getting into the weeds. To your point, what does it mean for scheduling? How do fans react to that? Look, it's very odd in this league in that you hear something like that, and you get fans who the immediate reaction, some go, "Hey, it's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward. Want to be able to go to more places and." See places that, ordinarily you don't necessarily see, and vice versa, and play some teams you don't normally play. And that'd be kind of cool, rather than a cross-division opponent in the Pac-12 from the north to the south and vice versa, who may not matter very much, quite honestly. Washington State, Arizona is not really moving the needle
right.
for a lot of folks. Okay, yeah, sure. Why not? And yet, here we are this week, and this has come up many times before. And this is not just an Oregon-Ohio State thing. This is definitely an Oregon fan-based talking point for some reason that just escapes me. And it's also going to come up at Colorado with Texas A&M and other places in this league. There's a very strange position from Pac-12 fans basically arguing, like, where is the merit? Where is the point in scheduling these really difficult non-conference games? So on one hand, you bring up the alliance. You talk about adding an opponent of a different kind of caliber, improving strength of schedule, adding a little bit of excitement. And on one hand, you get, yeah, maybe that sounds good. And then the same people, in some cases, go, but don't schedule anybody too tough. And it's like, How do you think you're going to win a national championship?
Yeah.
By just skating by long enough, and maybe the actual good teams get knocked off, and you just play the pincushions the whole way? It's a very strange mindset. To me, you don't get that. You don't get successful. You don't become at the level of Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. You do not reach their pinnacles right now by just trying to skate by. And there is a portion of Pac-12 fans, for some reason, who have this insistence that if they can just schedule easy enough and stay on the Pac-12 network where nobody can watch them long enough, that they can sneak in and then get their doors blown off in the first game of the playoff semifinal, and that will be a success. I don't understand it. It blows. I cannot begin to wrap my head around it, but I'm trying to digest it. I'm at it for nearly 3 years. I'm trying to digest it out here, trying to understand where people come from with this whole thought process and notion. It's bizarre.
Yeah, James, we got to go, but one of the reasons is because you were right smack in the middle of the SEC country covering Auburn, and so you know the mentality there. Of what they
down
think.
there is bring it on. Down there is there's Texas and Oklahoma, and there's Arkansas and Mississippi State saying, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah,
that's the heart of a competitor. Not, hey, can you know what? Can you make sure if we get in the alliance, can you make sure it's Wake Forest and Syracuse for us? That's not the heart of a champion. The heart of a champion is bring on anyone.
James,
and if it means losing a little bit, so be it.
I think we allowed you to vent a little bit here just a minute. That's great. James, it's always great to have you on. Thanks for being a part of it, buddy. Have fun this weekend.
Thanks, guys.
James Crepea from the Oregonian. He used to cover Auburn. By the way, December 18th, Oregon will host the defending national champion men's basketball team from Baylor. That's up on his timeline as well. As we mentioned, Baylor's non-conference schedule, games at Oregon, at Alabama, and at home against